sake of art.
Martine, did you ever see these pictures? With you in front of the camera and me behind it, we cannot go wrong.
You really do take some very interesting pictures, Carlo.
Yes, it looks like I will have to bring in some magazines to keep you occupied while I'm busy.
Don't bother. How could I be bored when I have such fascinating material, such as this, to look at?
Yes, they are good, aren't they? Especially for someone who doesn't specialize in architectural photography.
Oh, I see. These are architectural studies.
Yes. Just take a look at the composition, the juxtaposition of angles, the contrast of light and dark. Good decorating is having a contest, and this is my submission.
Oh. You took pictures like this to enter some silly contest?
Yes.
Don't give me that. You could care less about composition and dark and light, as you said. Your interest in locks and bolts goes no further than trying to find out the way to open them.
I admit that I have an affinity for the subject matter. I guess it's hard for one to change one's way of life.
Those pictures are your homework. You want to rob the Whitney house, don't you?
Don't you believe in calling ahead, Detective?
Gunther, I told you when I talked to you last night that I'd be in today to ask some more questions. I'll be as brief as possible.
Look, all you did was manage to waste a couple of gallons of police department gas. The Whitneys aren't here. They had an appointment with their decorator. They left about half hour ago.
No problem. I'll catch up with them later.
Oh, good. I'll tell them that you called. Have a nice day, Detective.
Gunther, you said last night that the maid, Miss Christina Summers, would be in today. Is she here this morning?
Yeah, she's out in the kitchen burning lunch.
Oh. Well, I'd like to speak with her.
Look, I already told you that the kid had nothing to do with the break-in.
Well, I'd like her to tell me that herself, Gunther.
All right, you want to talk to her? Be my guest. Only, don't be too rough on her because she's a little strange.
Strange? How?
I think she's got a couple of screws rattling around upstairs, you know? Like, the questions that she answers aren't always the one that you ask. Oh, don't get any funny ideas when I'm out of the room, because I counted all the silverware just this morning.
Raven Whitney, you are truly a beautiful woman.
She is. And you know, she didn't even try to break away when I told her that you were here.
You're Christina Summers?
That's right.
My name is Detective Damian Tyler. I'm with the Monticello Police Department.
Gunther said you wanted to ask me a few questions about the burglary?
Yeah, I'd like to get as much information as possible, find out exactly what happened last night.
Well, all I know is what I read in the paper. I left here last night at 5, and I didn't come back till this morning. I wasn't even here.
Well, maybe you could tell me precisely what you did with your time last night.
Well, I was visiting my mother. We went out to dinner, went shopping, came home, watched a little TV, and then we went to bed. Look, ask my mother. She'll tell you. The number is 555-7734. Go ahead.
Look, you can relax, Miss Summers. There's no need to bother your mother. I'm sure you're exactly where you said you were last night.
Well, Gunther says that you think that I had something to do with that awful crime. It's not true.
Well, you see, I was just teasing Chrissy, and she took me more seriously, that's all.
Miss Summers, we know that you were with your mother last night, just as we know that Gunther and Mr. Whitney were in Chicago.
Will you excuse me? I have an awful lot of work to do.
But I do have some questions to ask you, Miss Summers.
About what?
Well, you were off last night. Is that your regular night off?
Well, not exactly.
Oh. Well, who suggested that you take the night off?
I did. You see, Chrissy has become so conscientious since starting to work for the Whitneys that I practically had to just twist her arm just to get her to leave. Isn't that right, Chrissy?
If you say so.
You see, I think it's bad enough that Mrs. Whitney and Mrs. Saxon came to be terrorized by that psycho. I'm only glad that Chrissy wasn't here.
Well, that was a bad idea to give her the night off last night when you knew that you wouldn't be here. Seems like you were depleting the ranks.
Well, I didn't know that at the time. You see, Mr. Whitney, his trip to Chicago, it came up very, very rapidly, and, well, I'd already given Chrissy permission to leave, and I knew she had some plans, see, and I thought it was unfair to ask her to change them. And it's just one of those things.
Well, you know, I never did like coincidences, Gunther.
Well, you don't have to like them, Detective, because that's just the way it came down.
Can I go now? I've got some bread in the oven. It's going to be toast.
I have one more question to ask, Miss Summers. This man who broke in last night, his name was Romeo Slade. Did you know him by any chance?
Me? How can you even think that?
Well, I'm just trying to cover all the bases.
No, I don't know any men. And if I did make the acquaintance of a member of the opposite sex, he'd be a lot more respectable than that man.
You don't know any men, Chrissy?
Well, not yet. It's not easy when you're just out of the convent.
Did you say convent?
Our Lady of Perpetual Hope. I guess I didn't have the calling.
You can go now, Miss Summers. I don't think I have any more questions to ask.
I owe you one.
I acted like an A1 spoiled brat. I shouldn't have run out on the company like that when they were starting a rehearsal.
I gave you plenty of motivation for you to react the way you did.
No, look, I shouldn't have gotten that upset.
I shouldn't have come down on you the way I did in front of the entire company.
No, you made a lot of sense. And we both know that. Look, you've tried and tried and tried, but it's not enough. You want me to be better than I am. You want me to go out on that stage next week and dazzle that opening night audience.
We still have time to work.
You'd go to the wall with me, wouldn't you?
Any day of the week.
Gavin, you're terrific. But I know you don't want me to go out on that stage.
Jody, if you do get up, and things don't go well on the stage, it'll hurt you. I don't want you to be hurt. I love you too much for that. Do you know where you're supposed to be right now? You're supposed to be at the TV studio doing that interview with Nicole.
That's right. Oh, Gavin, the last thing I want to do is go on TV and tell everybody how happy I am to be opening the Whitney Dance Company.
To do battle for your client, I see.
That's right.
Well, I just hope this thing doesn't take too long, that's all.
You look bored already.
When you've been to as many of these preliminary hearings as I have, you know, sometimes I wonder why I didn't go to law school as opposed to the police academy.
Think you could have made it?
Be seated, please. Detective Stoner, approach the bench, please. I've heard this document from the district attorney's office regarding this case, and I'd just like to ask a few more questions before deciding whether or not to turn it over for prosecution. Are you the arresting officer?
Yes, Your Honor.
According to your report, the accused, Richard Ives, Ives entered Carl's liquor store at approximately 8:30 p.m. on the night of August 8th.
That is correct.
And according to the testimony of the proprietor, Carl Emerson, he waited several minutes before announcing his intention to rob the store?
Yes, that's true. Then he approached the proprietor at the checkout counter, told him that he had a pistol in his pocket and that he would not hesitate to use it unless all available funds were put into a paper bag and handed over to him immediately.
And did Mr. Emerson comply?
Well, he reached into the cash drawer and came up with a .45 caliber revolver.
Did he have a permit for that gun?
I'll ask the questions, Miss Bannister.
The answer is yes, Your Honor. He pointed the gun at the defendant and demanded that he leave the premises immediately.
Mm-hmm. What happened then?
Well, according to the proprietor, the defendant lunged at him in an attempt to wrestle the firearm from him. During the struggle, it went off, and the bullet hit Mr. Emerson in the hip.
And what did the accused do then?
Well, at that point, he ran out. That's how I got involved. I was in the vicinity on another matter, and I noticed him leaving in too big a hurry to go unnoticed. So I detained him, inquired what had happened, at which point I called an ambulance for Mr. Emerson and a patrol car to assist.
I see. Well, the facts seem straightforward enough.
Your Honor, if the court permit, I would like to ask Mr. Stoner a few questions.
Well, this isn't a trial, Miss Bannister. But if the officer has no objection.
No, I guess not.
Detective Stoner, are you sure that when Mr. Emerson pulled that gun and pointed at Mr. Ives, he simply asked him to leave?
Well, that's what the proprietor told me. I wasn't there, of course.
Isn't it possible that he did more than simply ask him to leave?
Well, such as what?
Your Honor, I would like to submit that the proprietor, Carl Emerson, used these exact words. Say your prayers, Sonny, because you're dead.
Well, how would I know that? How would anybody know that?
But there is something you do know about Mr. Emerson, isn't it? Wasn't he robbed several times in the past?
Yes, that's true. That's how he got his gun permit.
And in fact, he used that gun on at least 2 other occasions, wounding one would-be robber critically.
Well, yes, I'm aware of that, but in neither of those occasions was he the offender.
Detective Stoner, you know Carl Emerson. You know something about his reputation.
Well, I know he doesn't like to get robbed, Miss Bannister.
No, I'm sure he doesn't. However, hasn't he boasted several times in the past that the next guy who came into his store wouldn't live to tell about it?
I suppose I've heard something like that, yes.
And isn't it possible that on the night in question, Carl Emerson decided that he would revenge himself against all the other hold-up men who had ever come into his store, and that he intended to murder Richard Ives in cold blood, knowing that he could get away with it?
Well, I'm not really in a position to say what was or was not on his mind.
But do you think it's possible, Mr. Stoner? Because if it is, then when Mr. Ives realized Mr. Emerson's intentions, his action of trying to wrestle the gun away from him is clearly an act of self-defense.
Should I answer this question, Your Honor?
I wish you would, Detective, if you do have an opinion.
Yeah, well, I guess I do. Now, it is true that Mr. Ives did do what he did, which there's no excuse for. But it is also true that Mr. Emerson has a reputation for being trigger-happy and probably would have liked nothing more than to have been given an excuse to put a bullet through Mr. Ives' heart.
Jody, will you please relax? Now, it's just going to be a friendly little interview. It probably won't last more than 3 minutes of airtime.
Judy, we're gonna sit.
Just sit right here.
3 minutes. That's 3 minutes too much. Look, I'm very nervous about the opening, and I'm even more nervous about going on TV and telling everybody how wonderful it's going to be.
Well, I'm not asking you to plug it. I should think you'd want to anyway. Don't you want a lot of people there?
I don't think I have to. Sky Whitney has boasted about this so much, I'm sure it's going to be a sellout.
Well, we can't miss, can it? It's the first dance company in Monticello.
Yeah, but that doesn't mean all the seats are going to be filled every night. It depends on the quality of the dance company and how good I am. And right now, I'm very mixed up.
You're still not sure you're going to make it, are you?
I'm very torn. But now I know that my teacher, whose judgment I respect a great deal, doesn't want me to go on.
Gavin said that. He feels that way.
Well, no, he wasn't mean about it. He just cares for me.
Well, I know he cares for you, honey.
Well, he thinks I'm being pushed too far too fast. Look, I hate the idea of disappointing so many people. But I can't figure out if I'll be disappointing them more if I quit or if I go on.
That's why you don't want to go through with this interview, isn't it?
Now I'm disappointing you too, aren't I?
Oh, no. No, you're not disappointing me. Jody, if you did decide to quit, how would you feel about going on the air and telling everybody why?
You mean go on TV and tell all of Monticello?
Yeah?
Well, I'd rather do that than tell Skylar Whitney.
Well, whatever you do, I suggest you make up your mind pretty fast. You're going to open next week, you know.
Well, the truth is, I've already made my decision. It's definite, Nick. I'm not going to go through with it. I'm not going to be an overnight star. I'm going to wait until I'm really ready.
Martine, there is no reason for you to get all worked up. Your suspicions are totally unfounded.
Well, I don't believe you. And I want to. Are you going to rob Skylar's Whitney house?
I have a whole new life. I have no need, nor do I want any of Skylar Whitney's baubles.
You're not after his baubles. You don't care for his money. You want something else.
Such as?
Revenge. You want to even the score with Skylar Whitney for what he did to you in Paris.
That was a long time ago. I don't even think about it anymore.
No. You've never gotten over that night. The humiliation of being caught.
Pictures. I got away, didn't I? That's all that counts.
Yes, you remain free. The price was high. He treated you like dirt. The final humiliation was to see Sky take your place in my life.
That was then, and this is now. And nobody is going to take my place in your life ever again. Nobody.
Here's your tea, Gunther.
Oh, just put it down. You want something, Chrissy?
I'm curious, Gunther. Why did you tell Detective Tyler that you told me to take the night off?
Well, you had a legitimate alibi, and I didn't want the good detective to suspect you of any wrongdoing.
But Mr. Whitney said it was all right. He said it was perfect.
Well, I was just thinking of our employer. You know, I've got a little tip for you, Chrissy. Follow my example. You can go a long way in domestic service if you think of your employer a little more often. Now, our boss is a very busy man. Now the cops won't be bothering him with questioning. I've saved him the time and spared him embarrassment. Now, everybody's happy, right?
Yes, I see.
Well, I'm glad you got it straight. What are you going to be doing the rest of the afternoon?
I was just going upstairs to straighten up the bedroom.
Well, I want you to take care of this grocery list first. And I don't want you to come back here this afternoon until you've gotten every item on that list, okay?
I have to go into every store in Monticello to get all this.
Oh, well, you do that. Oh, Chrissy, have fun. And if you're smart, you keep your mouth shut.
Don't you think for 1 minute I've ever forgotten what that man did to me, what he took from me, including you. Now, I may have robbed his house, but that man committed crimes against me which I cannot begin to forget or forgive.
You have no choice.
Choice? I paid the price. Now let him pay one.
You can. Don't you see what happened to that burglar?
That burglar last night was in a whole different league, baby. I'm a whole lot better.
He's dead. Don't you understand? He's dead.
Yes, and you don't want to see the same thing happen to me, do you?
No, I don't. That's you.
So you care. Is that it?
Well, Mr. Whitney, I see you finally got your little private room all locked up without my help. Nobody will know your little secrets now. Is that what happened to Raven? Did she learn your secrets? Is that why your brand new wife had to die? what you're hiding inside this room, Mr. Whitney.